Good morning everybody and welcome back to a brand new video. Now today I thought it'd be kind of interesting to have a bit more of an in-depth discussion regarding the Grand Exchange tax and really the entire economic blog that came out a few days ago. There were a ton of topics I want to discuss today, such as whether a Grand Exchange tax will kill flipping. We're going to talk a bit about how effective I think a 2% Grand Exchange tax will be. We're going to try to determine how much money this tax could potentially remove, and really anything else regarding this blog. I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, if you do, always appreciate a like in the video. It really does help out a ton, so I always appreciate you guys doing that. Anyway, let's get started. Okay, so starting off here, I think one of the most important questions to answer is potentially how much money could be removed from the economy from a Grand Exchange tax, assuming it is 2%. Now, this question is a lot easier to answer than some of the other ones because we can have some fairly accurate guesses. So how the tax will work is for every transaction, there will be a 2% tax levied against the seller. Now it looks like there will be a few items exempt from the tax, mainly those that are too cheap to effectively tax. For example, a fire rune only costing 4 or 5 GP. Essentially, there will be a minimum sales value. Now that said, pretty much all of the data and transactions are publicly available, and a Reddit user by the name of Kieran Bowl posted the total daily coin spend for that day, which they've calculated at 3.3 trillion GP worth of transactions in the day. Now there are a few stipulations here, that's only pulling items that are worth more than 1,000 each, but still probably a fairly accurate figure. So this is a third-party calculation, but Jagex actually has released this figure in the past, and back at the beginning of 2020, the amount of GP traded per day was 5.3 trillion. So 5.3 trillion would be accounting for every item trade in the entire game, not just those over 1,000 GP. It would also be including those that don't use RuneLite as their main client, as the third-party dataset is only including RuneLite transactions, I believe. So obviously this figure will be a bit more accurate. I still think we could fairly easily guess that there's probably somewhere between 4 or 4.5 trillion GP worth of transactions that would probably fit Jagex's criteria to be taxed. Let's just go with 4 trillion because that's an easier number, which would mean theoretically 80 billion coins would be removed from the economy every day. Now this would make the Grand Exchange tax 4 times more effective than the Dual Arena tax, which the last time I got information regarding that, it was removing around 20 billion per day at the time. So there's no doubt that 80 billion is a giant number, but would it really play out this way? So while it's not hard to calculate a theoretical number for how much a 2% Grand Exchange tax will remove, it's really not that simple. And that's to do with one main reason, and that is the trade volume on the Grand Exchange will be greatly affected by any tax. There is literally no way that more people use the Grand Exchange from a tax, so it has to pretty much be less. So in the real world, if the taxes went up by 2%, I mean, a lot of people would complain, but in the end of the day, you just kind of have to pay it. Unless, of course, you're like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or whatever, and you can just not. But for the most part, most people will just end up paying it. However, in old school, there's a very easy and legal way to just not pay the tax, and that is just to trade player to player. So for example, an Elijah Spirit Shield, currently worth around 1 bill, are players likely to take a bit of time of their day to save themselves potentially 20 mil on taxes? I'd say that's fairly likely. And that could honestly be the case for a lot of items, even though right now the total daily coin spend is, let's say, 4 trillion GP. A Grand Exchange tax will 100% lower that, and the higher the tax rate, the less people are going to want to use the Grand Exchange, and the less coins are going to churn through there every day. Now that said, if the tax rate is really low, then it's kind of inconsequential as a tax anyway, so it will be really important to find the right balance. Now I personally don't know exactly what the perfect tax rate should be, and you'd obviously need access to all of the backend data, all of the transactions, and it may have to change a couple times. Now that said, I do support the Grand Exchange tax, and I don't think 2% is insane. It's in the ballpark, I think, but I would say 2% is the highest I would go. Now if we take a second to look at this chart posted by Kieran Bowl, we can see the distribution of what items have the highest GP spent per day. Now unsurprisingly, the most expensive items in the day make out a large portion of that. For example, the Twisted Bow alone makes up about 1/6 of all the GP that goes through the Grand Exchange, at least as far as what this person was tracking. We do know that this doesn't probably count for everything, but I think it's safe to say it's at least 1/10, which is still significant. So if we look at the top 15 items, we can see that they share one big similarity. They are expensive but very popular PVM items. For example, the top 3 items are essentially the 3 most expensive and popular PVM items: the Twisted Bow, the Elysian, the Scythe. The top 15 items alone that this person has tracked make up about half of the total daily GP spend. And I think it's pretty safe to say that the volume traded for these items would decrease significantly with any tax, and of course the higher the tax, the more it would drop. That's because a large portion of these trades will be players who are buying items temporarily. Maybe they need a Dragon Hunter Lance for raids for a bit, or buy Kodai for a burst task. So those types of transactions would plummet. We of course have people flipping items that would potentially drop significantly as well. And I think finally we have players who are going to be trading expensive and rare items. Those are almost never probably going to go through the Grand Exchange anymore at this point. So in the end, although a 2% tax theoretically could remove around 80 bill from the economy, it likely wouldn't play out that way. For example, if the volume was cut in half, all of a sudden you're only really getting 40 billion worth of revenue from taxes. Now with that said, if you decided to go with a 0.5% tax rate, then you're certainly going to get less, because you're only going to get 20 bill at that point, assuming the Grand Exchange behavior doesn't change at all. So obviously this will be one of the most important but difficult decisions to make, but I am really happy that they are making it and that they are relatively in the right area. So another really important question that I've been asked a few times since this blog has come out is, will a 2% tax kill flipping, or will a tax in general kill flipping? I would say no, it won't, and that's because even if they tax the GE 50%, it wouldn't kill flipping. People would just do it outside of the Grand Exchange. People did that for years before we had a centralized market, so it can never fully kill flipping. Now, will it make it harder, or will it be viable to do it in the Grand Exchange? That's a bit hard to say. I think it's very likely that if there's a 2% tax on the Grand Exchange, margins will simply widen to accommodate that. For example, if you're selling a magic log, previously there'd probably only be a margin of 5 or 6 GP. After the update, maybe it'd be 25 or 30 GP consistently. It is almost certain that the volume is going to lower with a tax, and with lower volume, generally there will be larger margins anyway, not even taking into account the tax itself. Now that's not to say that I think flipping is going to remain the exact same. It very well could change significantly. The barrier to entry could be much higher, and overall it could be much more challenging to do daily and day-to-day flips, stuff like that. But no, I don't think flipping will be dead. Okay, so we know regardless of what tax rate Jagex goes with, there's going to be a lot of gold being removed from the game. So what are they going to do with that? Well, some of the gold is going to be deleted, but a portion of it will go into a special coffer. This coffer is going to be used to purchase items from the Grand Exchange from players with the simple purpose of deleting them. So this would essentially mean that the Grand Exchange tax would be both an item sink and a gold sink. Now I do really like this idea, although it's going to be a little bit messy, and that's mainly because there are certain items that are going to be singled out, and there's going to be a lot of debate on which items should be sunk. Now I think they chose this way because of mainly some technical restrictions that wouldn't allow them to do it for every item, but also so that they could more so target specific items instead of sinking literally everything in the game, which may actually not be as effective. Plus, that would be a lot to maintain, but it is going to be a bit messy, mainly because I think a lot of people would agree that this list of items is not complete, and yes, they are going to be adding more things to it, but what items deserve to be on here, which ones don't, who are they going to listen to, how many of each item do they think should be removed from the game every day, what is a fair price for these items? Those are all questions that are going to have a lot of different answers, and in the end, Jagex will have to make that decision. Sure, it's their game, you could argue they could do whatever they want, which is true, but up until now, the market has been pretty much a free market. The value of items were simply determined by supply and demand, and now it's going to change a bit. And that's not to mention that every time that they publicly announce a new item that is going to be sunk, it will artificially jump up in price anyways, so I just think this is going to be pretty messy, but again, I do think it's a really interesting idea, and I mean, either way, I'm really excited to see what happens. Anyway guys, that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, I'm always interested to see what you guys think when I have more of an opinion piece. Always a risk, of course, putting your opinion out there. I might not be right about all this, just keep that in mind. Just my day 3 or 4 thoughts after the blog has been posted. And of course, a lot of things may change. Thanks for watching guys, and I will see you next time. Now before I go here guys, I want to give a giant thank you to all of my members over on YouTube. Thank you so much to Sejuani's Flail, The Hybrid, Ocelot, and Kush Patel for all being subscribed at the Dragon tier. You guys are awesome. Thank you guys so much as always. Also another giant shout out to Mexos, Basetich, MDM001, and Yo-Yo Sub 89 for being subscribed at the Runite tier. Thanks a lot, guys. As always, if you guys are looking for another way to support the channel, becoming a YouTube member is an awesome way to do so, get immortalized in all of my future videos, get a custom role in my Discord server, and get access to my video release schedule. Thanks again, guys, and I'll see you next time.